The Author's Shelf.
The Author's Shelf.
The Author's Shelf. The Author's Shelf. It's about books and stuff.
Good afternoon, I'm Georgie Donaghy. Sorry about that. Welcome to the Author's Shelf. Deborah Abela will be joining me in the studio. She's a children's author, reading ambassador, and a whole lot more. We'll be chatting with her shortly. And sit back, kick off your shoes, and enjoy as we bring you the stories beyond the page. Right now, I'd like to introduce today's guest. This is your life moment here. My son's love of soccer is how I met this gifted storyteller. Several years ago, I picked up a copy of Jasper Zammit at a CBCA Writers' Festival at a time when my son had entered a reluctant reading stage. Now, he read the book. He was hooked immediately, and that left me desperate to find the others in the series. After doing my parent happy dance because he was reading again, I went in search for the other books in the series, and I found them and was fortunate enough to meet the author. And here we are today. This lady is the author of the Max Remy series, which has an amazing 10 books in the series. Of course, there's the Jasper Zammit series, which she wrote in partnership with the soccer legend, the late Johnny Warren. Her most recent series, The Ghost Club, is about a ghost-busting brother and sister duo, Angeline and Edgar Usher. It's packed with paranormal fun and otherworldly inventions. Another one of Deb's award-winning books is Grimston. This is a story about a city hit by a massive wave left it uninhabitable. Isabella and her best friend Griffin were left behind and must rebuild their new world by creating flying machines and other inventions just to survive. But danger is not always seen, and what lurks beneath the water might just be their biggest threat of all. She's won countless awards, both here and overseas, and has been shortlisted for even more. In 2012, Deb was nominated as an ambassador for the National Year of Reading and also an ambassador for the Premier's Reading Challenge in New South Wales. Before that, she was awarded by the federal government the title of National Literacy Ambassador. She's also an author ambassador for Room to Read. Many children have fallen in love with reading because this talented lady put pen to paper. Her bubbly personality is infectious and leaves children hungry to read. I'm honoured to call her my friend, Deborah Abela. Welcome to the Author's Shelf.
Oh, thank you, Georgie. It's so lovely to be here.
All right. How about you tell our listeners what is you can stop giggling now.
That was just quite a wrap. I'm a bit overwhelmed.
Tell us the Deborah Abela story.
I guess I explained why I decided to be an author to kids by how I grew up and what kind of kid I was as a child. And, and I confess, I say to the kids, all right, before I tell you anything, I have just to confess what happened to me as a kid. And I was always in trouble. And then, of course, they look at me a bit shocked and a bit like, oh, my gosh, what do you mean you're always in trouble? I tell them, look, I wasn't a naughty kid. I think I was a good kid. I liked old people and young people and dogs and animals and cats but I was a curious kid. And so the curiosity in little kind of short, puny Deb just got me into a lot of trouble because I'd wonder things like, I wonder what would happen if I climbed onto the garage roof and, which of course I did promptly. And then I thought, well, I wonder what would happen if I got a good run up to the edge of the garage roof and I flung myself off the roof. I wonder if I could make the pool. And if I didn't, of course. I did jump off the garage roof, but I can tell you I didn't make the pool. So I was I'm kind of lucky I survived my childhood. But the way I kind of look at writing is there are the three main components: your characters, your setting, and the dilemmas and problems facing these characters. And so, in fact, what your job as an author is to make trouble for those characters. So, in fact, the kind of trouble I got into as a kid was really good practice. I wish I had been able to tell my mum back then for being an author, because that is exactly what you do. As soon as everything's going just fine in a novel, you have to kind of mess it up a bit and you have to give that character some kind of dilemma or some kind of problem. And that's how stories work.
That's you're still giggling. No, that's great. That's I'm glad you didn't hurt yourself.
Oh my gosh, I don't know how I survived my childhood, but my poor mother. And then actually a few summers after the garage incident, my mum sent me to my nana's house because my nana had this really kind of boring house with no pools, no hills hoist even in the backyard, like nothing I could kind of do any injury to myself with. So, and we've got 4 kids in our family, but my mother would only send me. And I love that because I love my nana and I had it all to myself. But it was only years later that I thought, this is because you've got 4 kids to look after and I was just a little bit too difficult.
So did you find anything at your nana's to get into mischief over?
Oh, look, they were beautiful. She backed onto, she lives near, she used to live near Warragamba Dam in Sydney. And so, there was bushland and there were,
okay.
you know, it was just an amazing place to explore and walk. And look, my nana used to tell me stories. So I remember lots of stories from Nana. I loved it.
Now, some of you may know that Deborah is actually the reason that we're here. She's actually the reason the Author's Shelf came to be. Earlier this year, Deb emailed me about a Northern Beaches radio show looking to interview authors. I contacted them about my Creative Kids Tales website and was asked to join them in the studio. From that, I contacted the staff here at 2SR and was invited in for a chat. So listeners, if you're looking for someone to blame, Deborah Abela is that person. No, I'm only joking. Well, about the blame part, Deborah, you're the reason we're here, so thank you very much.
I accept that.
All right, we're going to take a short break and we will be right back with our guest today, Deborah Abela.
99.7 2SR FM.
I'm chatting with Deborah Abela. Some of you may remember the popular kids TV show Cheese TV from Channel 10 a long time ago. Deborah was a part of the Cheese TV team. And she's going to tell us all about that right now.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that was a really fantastic job. It kind of came about because I'd wanted to be a writer since I was 7. And then I went to teachers college. And then after that, I thought, I'm too young to actually teach high school kids who are only going to be a couple of years younger than me. So I went traveling for a couple of years. And when I came back, then I did a communications degree at the University of Technology in Sydney. And so I knew what I wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't quite sure where and how. And it was through the end of that degree that I thought, right, I need a job where I can kind of practice writing every single day. And luckily enough, I got, in fact, what I really did was I begged. I begged strangers I met at parties and dinners and at my local grocery store. I just begged and said, this is what I like, what I want to do. I want to get a job where I can practice writing. I don't know who else to do it. They very rarely advertise those kind of jobs on the internet or, in the newspapers. And it just so happened that I met a woman who said, look, there's a TV show that's just started on Channel 10 and they're looking for someone to be, the assistant producer and write scripts for these kids who have to act out these little segments. And I thought, that sounds perfect. And I hadn't really thought of writing for kids before. I'd written a novel kind of just, in the background while I was at university, and it was an adult novel. But I started working as the assistant producer on this TV show. It was on first thing in the mornings from 7 to 8:30 in the morning. There were cartoons on it, and then there were little hosting segments. So we had these 3 young kids, sometimes 4 young kids, and I would write silly, funny scripts for them, and they'd act them out, and we'd edit them and add silly sound effects and music, and it was fantastic practice for writing every single day, because the show went to air 6 days a week, and so you couldn't have nothing go to air. So the pressure was on every single week, and every week of the year, even over Christmas, this show went to air. So it was brilliant practice for, those moments where you think, I've got nothing, I've got no ideas. That's not an option. When TV has to go to air, something has to appear on those screens. So it was fantastic. And we got to meet authors and illustrators and astronauts, and it was, a time too where we got to travel. Each year we'd go down to the snow and we'd interview people on, like people who trained rescue dogs would say, well, how do you train a rescue dog? What's your technique? And it was just brilliant.
Very exciting.
It was fantastic.
How long were you at Cheese TV for?
So 7 years altogether. And for a large part of that, I was the assistant producer, and then the producer moved on, and I put up my hand and said, yeah, I think I'm ready to do this. So it was kind of a little bit scary because I was kind of a girl from the suburbs, and thought, gosh, what am I doing? I'm sitting in this studio directing this kind of national television show. But it was just fun. You just got to remember to enjoy it. And so it was fantastic. I just loved it.
So you got to be a big kid then?
Got to be a big kid and got paid to watch cartoons, because part of my job was to watch cartoons and choose which ones we'd put on the show. Kids, when I go into schools and visit kids in schools, they can't believe that you can get paid to watch cartoons. And I said, yeah, there are good jobs out there. You just have to be very good at begging to get the right job.
So if you see a child begging now to get onto a TV show. Okay. I'm chatting with Deborah Abela. You're listening to the Author's Shelf on 2SR. You left Cheese TV.
Yes.
And what was the reason that you left Cheese TV?
So I'd been working on a novel while I was at Channel 10, and I thought, well, I'll just play with it. I'll just see if I'm ready to actually write a whole novel. And so I did that, and it was based on a couple of things. And this is the biggest tip I give to anyone who wants to write, young or old, it doesn't matter, but write about stuff that you get excited about and you love. And then the actual writing process is fun with its hard days, of course. But hopefully if you infect that book with your enthusiasm and your kind of passion for that, then it will translate to the reader. So I loved cartoons. On the show, we had, Superman and Spider-Man and the Tick. I don't know if anyone knows the Tick was a very silly superhero. SpongeBob SquarePants, but Dragon Ball Z. So it was a mix of kind of high action cartoon, but also very, very silly comedy. And I loved that. And I thought, I want to write a book that's kind of like those two lots of cartoons in a book. And I also went traveling around the world, kind of just after uni as well, and had lots of adventures where I was caught in desert sandstorms in the Sahara Desert. I was thrown in jail twice. I was harassed by monkeys who threw poo at me. I, woke up one morning on a ship in the middle of Africa on a really old rusty ship, and woke up next to an alligator. So I wanted to also write about a feisty young girl who had lots of different adventures, but in that cartoony sort of style. And in fact, I wrote this very first book in the Max Remy series while I was there, sent it out to the top kind of 5 publishers, thinking I might as well start at the top and then see what happens from there.
Why not?
And exactly. And then I got really lovely rejection letters, and any author out there who's ever sent anything out and gotten either no reply or gotten a standard sort of thanks for writing but no thanks, everybody kind of hand wrote letters to me and said, look, we really liked it, but it doesn't quite fit what we do, or we loved it. I got all the way to the end, if that's any consolation, because I was curious to know what would happen, but we were kind of full already. And so I got these lovely rejection letters. So if anything, they were a whole bunch of no's that kind of encouraged me to keep going. But then in fact I got a yes, and they said, that my publisher then said, yes, we'll love that book, and can you write some more? And so I didn't know whether I could, but you've also got to bluff a bit, I think, and say, oh, yes, I've got a million stories. So, just trust me, it'll be fine. Not knowing if it was going to be fine, but you got to do it.
Well, you must have been a very good bluff, because you had 10 books in the Max Remy series.
Yeah,
so
I bluffed for a little while.
You did.
Got away with it.
There's obviously a difference between writing for TV and writing children's books.
Yeah. TV, it was brilliant practice because it was a very similar audience. So, and the hosts of the show were kids as well. So it was really good writing scripts for kids to talk to other kids. So you've got to look kids right in the eye when you write for them. It can't be, oh, what lesson can I teach in my wise old days? Or, it can't be didactic, or it can't, it has to be looking eye to eye to these kids. And on their level, and it has to be, obviously it's got to be entertaining and gripping and fun. And so Cheese TV, there was years of practice of writing that kind of idea that this has got to be immediate, it's got to be fun, it's got to get them quite quickly. And kids' books move quite quickly, and television does too. So, and cartoons do. Scripts for cartoons are written very, very economically and very quickly. So all of that just added up to actually being really good practice of finally writing a novel, which of course is very different. The one big thing, and the one big reason I wanted to leave Cheese TV in the end was, that constant treadmill of writing. So you have to write 6 different television shows a week, every week. And it doesn't matter if you're sick. It doesn't matter if you're unwell. It doesn't matter if you've had, you just have to do it. And when I left Cheese TV, I thought, you know what? I want to spend a whole year writing one thing instead of at the end of each year having written, 280 things, whatever it worked out at. So, it was such a luxury to spend a whole year just writing one novel.
And with your books, you've got quite a few different characters. Where do you get the inspiration for your characters? Where do your ideas come from? We've heard about where Max came from.
Yeah.
Obviously your jumping off the roof days was a big part of that.
Big part.
And Jasper Zammit, Johnny Warren, of course, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But Grimston. So where and your Ghost Club kids, where do they come from?
They, I remember a lecturer in kids literature saying to me once, to be a kids writer, it's not just about remembering back to your childhood and remembering, what kind of scared you or what you were excited about or, your kind of really happy events and sad events. It's somehow linking into that part of you that still is that kid. And I can do it quite easily. I think I can absolutely, when I start to write a character, start to feel the emotions of that character. And I try and describe it like this because it still is a bit of a mystery. When I sit down to a novel, and I've written 21 novels now, it feels like every time I sit down, it's the first time I've ever done it. But because when you think of the characters initially, they're literally like someone you see on a bus. Right? So you know stuff about them, the colour of their hair, what they're wearing, how tall they are, male or female, but you don't know anything else. And so with each draft of a novel and each scene that you write about that character, they slowly become a friend. And so it's like getting to know the new kid who's sitting next to you in class or the new person who's started at your work. You, over a cup of coffee, you discover what they like. They might have a bad day and something upsets them and okay, that's what upsets them. And eventually you get to know them very, very well. And so characters go from being someone, you saw in a bus in a way to someone who is a really close confidant and a really close friend a lot of the times. So I love that idea that with each draft and each scene, you get to know these people better. So, but I also put bits of me in there, bits of, how I react when I'm scared or bits of, just bits of me, what I think's important, not important. And so, these people then, after I sort of inject tiny bits of me or tiny bits of other people I know, they then, with each draft and each scene, become their very own particular person. And I love that. I still find it fascinating and I still find it a little bit of a mystery. But and the writers out there will know this, if you keep writing and writing, they will become deeper, more kind of, fuller, fleshy sort of characters. And I was at a conference recently where an author said, writing is about rewriting. That is what it is.
Definitely.
And you just rewrite and you rewrite and you rewrite. And he also said writing is the hard work you do when no one's watching. And that is exactly what that is all about. There is no point doing one draft and maybe another sort of half a draft because it can be so much better if you work on it again and again.
I love it when a new character's born and is coming to you, and for me it's a bit like that Titanic scene where she's where they're standing off the edge of the boat. I feel like I'm a ship, not a boat. I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff and the wind's blowing in my hair and I can feel this character coming and all the excitement and all these things that I'm about to learn about this new character. It's just, I love it.
Yeah. And I like to try and interview the characters. I try and sort of ask them questions.
Okay.
So even if the answers to those questions don't end up in the book. So what was their childhood like? I know for me, a lot of my kids are still kids, my characters. What do they think of their family? Do they trust people very easily? Like stuff that gets into the kind of the absolute essence of their personality. And that will dictate how they react in different situations. So all characters should, in a way, behave slightly differently to a situation than the next character standing next to them.
Thanks, Deb. That's really useful information and good tips there. All right, we're going to take a short break and we'll be back again with Deborah Abela. You're listening to The Author's Shelf on 2SR.
Your community, your station, 2SR.com.au.
Welcome back. Deb, you're an ambassador for the Room to Read organisation. How important is this organisation?
Oh my gosh. I met a very wonderful woman a couple of years ago called Jenny Orchard, and we were chatting away about this organisation that she's a volunteer for. And it is the most incredible story. There's a man called John Wood, and he was a huge, highly paid, high-powered executive at Microsoft. And, he was kind of on that, I've got this great life, great house, and, but it's a little bit empty. There's something kind of missing. So he went off on a trip to Nepal, climbed a mountain, got chatting to a teacher, and he said, "Oh, I'd love to see your school." And so the teacher said, "I'd be really honoured to show you." So this teacher then took him to this one room with, a dirt floor. There were a couple of chairs, a kind of an old, scribbly old blackboard, and a cupboard with 4 books inside, and the cupboard was locked. And that was pretty much the kids' library. Now, the books were something like Umberto Eco's Foucault's Pendulum, a German guide to, eating. It was they were ridiculous books, but they treasured them and locked them up. And John just said, you know what? I can do something about this. I'm going to go home and I'm going to bring books back. And the teacher said, that's very kind, and kind of really didn't expect to see John Wood again. John Wood went home, emailed all his friends and all his high-powered kind of contacts and said, I need books and I need them now for a kid's school. Gathered them all up, gathered up so many, in fact, that it overflowed in his garage. So he called his dad and said, can I use your garage? So all these garages were starting to fill with books. And John went back to Nepal with his dad, who was in his 80s, and they lugged these books with these yaks up the hill to this man in the school who could not believe when he saw John and his dad and these yaks and all these books. And he thought, you know what? That's a really hard way of getting books to people, to kids who can't afford it and can barely even go to school, So he then started up this organisation called Room to Read, where they raise money to not only put books in these libraries, but basically they're building libraries, they're building schools. They don't also just want to impose themselves on these communities. What they then do is train local teachers. So teachers then can teach these kids in their own languages. He's also created books because he realized too, well, books from our culture kind of often won't resonate with these kids. And, everyone kind of likes to read books from their own culture. So he then set up all these publishing companies, or would go to small publishing companies and say, we will pay you to create picture books in your own language. We'll use local authors, local illustrators. So it's kind of about empowering communities too, where education's kind of scarce and it is not funded. And so the other arm of Room to Read that I really love is they have this scholarship program for girls. Because the trouble is, not only are there so many people across the world who can't read, boys, if there are schools, boys will often get sent to school and girls will get pulled out quite early to help around the home, to help bring up the younger kids, to help, clean and to cook. So girls were getting taken out of school when there was the opportunity to go to school. So they then set up programs where girls could stay in school, still learn life lessons of, cooking and sewing, and so they can still have those beautiful skills when they leave, but they also get a chance to be educated. And that's the thing I get really excited about, that not only are kids being given the opportunity for the first time in that sometimes those villages experience to go to school, but to read books in their own language and to suddenly say, you know what, I want to be a doctor, and suddenly it's possible.
Wow.
I just get so passionate about this organisation. I just love it.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you. It's currently 12:31. You're listening to The Author's Shelf. What's the most rewarding thing about being a children's author?
Oh, I like talking to kids in schools. I love it. When I first left, producing a kids show on Channel 10, which was busy and you're on the phone all the time and something goes wrong and you've got to fix it. And, so it was a very chaotic, busy sort of life. Then, when I got my first book accepted and they said, can you write other books? I went, you know what? This doesn't come around very often, this opportunity. So I'm going to quit my day job, live off my savings for a little while and see how I go, and then just keep writing. And so I've gotten myself off track. What was your question again? This is what happens to my brain. No, I know already, the favourite part of writing. Yes. Then they said, so that would be great. We'd love you to write more books. So we went home thinking, this is going to be great. I'm going to have a quiet life. I'm not even going to answer the phone. And then, of course, they said, now that your first book's out, we want you to go and talk in schools. We want you to go and talk on radio. We want you to go to... So actually, I was kind of talking more than I ever had before. And at first it kind of, I thought, well, what do you do with kids for an hour in school often? How do you get them excited about books for a whole hour? I'm not a performer. I'm not an actress. And then eventually, of course, when you get little ways of kind of, reading stuff out to kids and getting them excited, you find ways to actually entertain them for an hour. I love it. I just love it. And when I was first asked to speak to kindies, little 5-year-olds, I thought, oh, what am I going to do with 5-year-olds? But they're some of my favourite audiences to speak with now, because with a 5-year-old, you only have to kind of say a couple of words, in the beginning of a story, and they're with you.
Absolutely. They're hanging off every word.
They have suspended all knowledge that they're in a classroom in their school uniform and it's, Wednesday after that goes in seconds and they're with you. It's a little bit harder when you get into, talking to kids in year 6, but they still will come with you because I truly, honestly believe that everyone loves a good story.
Thank you. I'm sitting here hanging off every word and I keep losing where I'm up to on my question sheet. Okay. If you weren't writing for children and if you weren't writing for TV, what do you think you'd be doing?
Oh, gosh. That's such an interesting question. I think part of the reason I read is because it's like going on an adventure in your head, right? But I actually do like going on adventures. I like trekking and I like, like for 5 days walking through deserts and only having the stuff in my backpack to kind of keep me safe and hopefully some sensible logic if things go wrong. And and now too, with knowing that Room to Read exists and there are volunteers going all the way throughout the world, helping build libraries and stuff, I suspect I would have kind of perhaps merged into something like that. So combining my love still of books and my belief that we can eradicate poverty with education. I think we can eradicate abuses and we can eradicate ignorance, which then leads to stuff like wars with reading. It's that fundamental and I think it's that important. So I think I would have probably still mushed together my love of reading and writing. I think I still would have written and I think I would have tried to mush it in with some kind of adventurous, offering.
You would have been in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think so. Getting muddy and dirty and coming back to huts at night writing. I don't know if that's, I don't know, maybe something like that.
Okay. All right. On that note, okay, in honour of today's guest, Deborah Abela, I thought I would read a review of The Ghost Club 3, A Transylvanian Tale. And then I thought, no, let's hear Deb read a snippet from the actual book. Okay. Here is Deborah Abela reading from The Ghost Club 3, A Transylvanian Tale. Take it away, Deb.
So this is chapter 1, A Particularly Pesky Ghost. You're not getting away that easily. Angeline fixed her sights on the faint red glow of the ghost that had appeared on the screen of her tracker. She and Edgar had been following this particular spectral pest for days, and once again it was almost in her grasp. She stepped carefully and quickly over the damp forest floor, which was twisted with roots and choked with the musty decay of leaves. Swirls of mist caught in her torchlight, creeping from between the trees and circling her ankles like snakes. She knew she shouldn't be here on her own. When she first spied the ghost, she should have rushed to Edgar's room and told him what she'd seen. He would have grabbed his ghost coat and satchel like she had and raced from the stone fortress to attempt the catching together. Only the most experienced Ghost Club members were allowed to go out on a catch alone, and even then, they often went with a partner. It was safer that way. You could never tell just how much trouble your ghost was going to cause, and 2 pairs of eyes were always better when dealing with pesky ghosts. But tonight she had little time to act, so act she did. Angeline held her tracker before her. The deep red glow of a ghost was still on her screen, hidden in the thick fog, just out of sight. She hurried on, treading as delicately as her boots would allow. She briefly glanced up when the toe of her boot caught under a knotted root and she stumbled forward, flinging her hands out to break her fall. Her torch and tracker flew from her grip. Angeline fell hard, looking up just in time to see her torch land in the mud and her tracker strike against a boulder with a sickening crack. She scrambled forward, whispering, "No, please, not now." The display panel was shattered. The red glow was gone. She really shouldn't have gone on a catch without a partner. She knelt on the ground, mud splattering her face and soaking into her jeans. The forest was now thick with fog. Without her tracker, she had no chance of knowing where she was going, and even less of finding her way back. She had 2 options. Give up and again let this ghost get away, or keep going and complete another catch that would continue to mark her as one of the best ghost catchers in the business. She sighed and knew the sensible thing to do. But she also knew that this ghost was getting to be a real pain, and it was time someone did something about it.
Thank you very much, Deb. And I know how the book ends, so definitely go out, get a copy of The Ghost Club 3. Get 1, 2 and 3. Deb, Grimston. Tell us a little bit about Grimston.
Oh, Grimston is a novel I wrote a couple of years ago. It's my cranky novel. I wrote it because I got really fed up. I just thought governments around the world weren't taking care of the planet enough. They weren't being good enough leaders. And all around me, I kept seeing, regular people trying to kind of recycle, trying to not use much water, trying to, in their own homes, in their own lives, try not to use the car as much. And I thought, well, I think regular people are doing a good job, but I don't think governments are taking this seriously enough. And so I thought, all right, what would happen if the governments continue not to be good leaders on taking care of the planet and something actually does go wrong? Something big, but not kind of apocalyptic. So I thought, all right, I'm going to flood an entire city. So I wrote a book called Grimston, which is kind of like the city of London, but of course this grim thing happens, this huge flood. And so in the city of Grimston, most people actually do get rescued and they get taken to dry parts of the country. But a couple of kids are left behind, and it's led by Isabella, the very feisty, sword-fighting Isabella, who I love, and her very best friend called Griffin, and they're both 12-year-old kids. There's also 14-year-old Xavier, who's quite kind of a show-off, a bit mouthy, but he's also built himself a flying machine that comes in very, very handy. So these kids are inventive and they're brave. There's evil harbour lords, there are sea monsters to contend with, and then of course there's just basic survival. How do they keep warm? How do they get food? How do they cook food? And they look after 3 other little kids who are only 8, so they've got this little compact, gorgeous little family. And the main thing, of course, they want to do one day is to be able to leave the city of Grimston.
And your Jasper Zammit series, Johnny Warren.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Johnny Warren.
Johnny Warren was fantastic. He called my publisher, Random House, and said, "Hello, it's Johnny Warren here. I want to write a series of kids' books, and they're going to be about soccer." And anyone who's met Johnny Warren, he kind of talked like that. It was fantastic. And so Random House knew instantly who this was. One of Australia's greatest soccer legends is ringing them to say, I want to do a series of kids' books about soccer. So they literally did what kind of rarely happens in publishing. Come in, we'll sign it up. Like that it kind of rarely happens, that sort of deal. So Johnny said, well, wait a minute, hang on. There's one problem. I can't write. And so they said, well, that's not a problem at all. We'll use all of your expertise, your knowledge, your passion for the game, and we will hook you up with a writer. And so I'm not still sure why today they called me, but they said, Deb, we want you to write a brand new series of books, and they're going to be about soccer. And so, of course, my instant reaction was, well, I don't know anything about soccer. And so they said, well, don't you worry. We'll introduce you to Johnny and he will tell you everything there is to know about soccer. And so we needed to meet just to see if we'd kind of get along. And he stepped into the room, held out his hand, shook my hand and said, hello, I'm Johnny. I don't write. And so, of course, I shook his hand back and said, hello, I'm Deb. I don't play soccer. And he went, oh, that's perfect. This will be great. Sit down. I'll tell you some stories. And that's kind of how it happened. We had a few meetings, which I recorded, and he would just tell me story after story of the highs, the lows, what it's like to be a tiny, skinny, puny kid turning up to a soccer trial, and the coach just looking at this puny little kid saying, oh, no, you'll get slaughtered out there. Go home for a year, eat your porridge, come back, and we'll trial you out then. And Johnny wanted to play soccer and be part of the Socceroos more than life itself. So for a year, he ate porridge. Like he did what the coach said every single day. Came back, trained every day. Came back a year later, and the coach kind of went, yeah, I remember you. You were here a year ago. And of course, Johnny tried out, and not only was he put into the team, he was put up an age above him because he was just so good. And so it was, that kind of passion when you meet people who are that excited about what they do and so passionate. It is just such a privilege to be in that kind of sphere of excitement. I loved working with him.
What a very special time.
It was great. It was fantastic.
Welcome back to the Author Shelf. I'm sitting here chatting with Deborah Abela this afternoon. What's coming up next for you, Deb?
Oh, if I'm very lucky, in the next few days, I'll finish the sequel to my novel Grimston.
Yay.
Yay. Yes, that's right.
Was that a quiet enough yay?
So that's if I'm lucky. Well, I've got my head, when I go home today, head down, and the next few days, hopefully. I've only got about 3 chapters to go, so I think it should be okay.
And you have something special coming up next Saturday?
Next Saturday, yes, Berkelo bookstores around Sydney, quite a few of them, are going to partner up with Room to Read, that beautiful literacy organisation that I'm a part of. And authors, mostly kids authors, are going to be in their stores, just happy to have a chat, to sign, to talk about their books. And proceeds from the sales of the books, a percentage of that will go to Room to Read, which helps build those beautiful schools and libraries in underprivileged countries. And so I will be at the Paddington Berkelo bookstore with the very beautiful Suzanne Gervais. So there'll be 2 kids authors there, just happy for a chat from 10 till 12 next Saturday.
Excellent. I might just pop along with my little ones to that one.
Lovely.
If you're an emerging author and are looking for somewhere to display your work, why not visit creativeKidsTales.com.au? There you'll find a complete publisher's listing, competition information, writing tips, and a whole lot more. It's a great site to assist you on your journey to publication. Coming up next on 2SR is Macedonian Radio with Mille and Petco. I've already found out what's next. From you. We've already discussed that.
Yes.
We know about your new books coming out. All right. Don't forget, we've got a giveaway happening. If you'd like your chance to win an autographed copy of The Ghost Club, A Transylvanian Tale, pop over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Author Shelf, and tell us what you think. The best thing about being a Ghostbuster would be we'll announce the winner on our next show. I can't believe it's almost time, Deb.
I know, that went so fast.
Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
We should have done a special 2-hour show. That would have been really good. If you'd like more information about Deb, or you can look her up, deborahabela.com. And she also goes and does workshops and lots of things. I wish we had more time to chat, but we don't. I'm sorry. Anyway, get along, check out Deb's website, and you can find out all the wonderful things this lady does. Now, it's time for us to say goodbye. I did promise you a little Muppet magic, so here it is. Kermit the Frog, The Rainbow Connection. Until next time, thanks for joining me on the Author's Shelf. I'll be back on the 3rd of November where I'll be chatting with new author Wei Chim. Until then, happy